Hi, welcome to episode 3 of New to Hill Country. If you're new to the podcast, New to Hill Country was started by myself, Michael Hines, and my wife, Kaylee. We moved back to America in October of 2019, specifically to Hill Country, and we're just trying to get to know the area better, and we figured we can help other people figure out what's going on in the area by recording our process. I am the owner of SBG Texas. At SBG Texas, we teach martial arts, yoga, and meditation to kids and adults. If you're interested in that, you can go check us out at www.sbgtexas.com. Our other show sponsor is LMNT. LMNT is an electrolyte mix developed by Elemental Labs, and it works wonders in terms of improving athletic performance, just a tremendous reduction in cramping, and it can really lead to much higher levels of satiation and just feeling really like your body is dialed in and not over bloating on water. So today we are talking to Kent Schoberle. Kent Schoberle works at Augustus Ranch and has a pretty interesting career leading up to his movement back to working on a ranch and working with cattle and working with beef. So we just explore all of that, and we have a good time talking. I hope you enjoy the show. Okay, we are live now. Well, welcome to the show. I'm here talking to Kent Schoberle of Augustus Ranch, and it's good to hear from you, Kent. How are you doing?
Man, I'm good. It has been a little while since I've seen you and most everyone else I know. So
Sure. Yeah, we are recording this during the lockdown. I'm not sure if this will be this will probably be published after the lockdown, but this is mid-lockdown as we're talking here. So we'll just dive right into it, Kent. Did you grow up in Hill Country? Or are you?
No, I didn't. I'd also just like to add real quick. You pronounce my name Schoberle, and I really like that. It's actually Schoberle, but I kind of like that. I kind of like that accent on the end. So.
Oh, sorry. I've probably been saying that wrong since I first met you. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. It sounds like
Schoberle.
French or something.
Yeah.
No, I'm just joking.
No, it's all good.
You're good. Yeah, no, I didn't grow up in Hill Country, but I did grow up in Dallas. So I spent the first 18 years of life in Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. And that's 3 or so hours north of Austin, 3.5 hours north of Austin. Left when I was 18 and came back when I was 33, I think. Okay. 33, yeah. So,
okay. I see. So you were 18. When you were 18, you left Dallas. And talk us through that. Where did you go from there?
Yeah, so I graduated high school and kind of was wondering what I wanted to do with my life, and I ended up going to University of New Mexico for a couple years, did fine arts studies and also film, and realized really quickly that I wanted to learn more about film from kind of the cutting edge, so technology, software, animation, and all of that stuff. So I ended up transferring out to a school in the Bay Area, Northern California, and I spent 13 years in the Bay Area before I returned to Texas, and so kind of went out there and got exposed to all kinds of different things, and eventually. Went to school, got a degree in film and visual effects. I ended up working in the industry for several years. I started with a stint at Pixar, really an internship, really basic things, and went on to work at 2 other companies and worked on some great projects like Iron Man and Live Free or Die Hard, Pirates of the Caribbean, just some really great film projects. But that whole time, my real passion I was discovering was food, and just thinking about where it came from, how to best cook it, how, just enjoying eating it. And so I kind of left that industry and ended up, diving into that head first. And so that was 10 years ago. So,
Can we push back into that a little bit more? I'm just kind of curious, like when you say you worked on Iron Man, for example, like what did you do on Iron Man? Like what were your kind of daily tasks or work sort of?
Sure. So I was a creature technical director, was my title. And that's basically just a fancy way of saying, in the computer, for all of the animation sequences, there's several stages of producing the visual effects and the animation. And so one of those stages is actually constructing the body and the bone structure and the muscles. And in Iron Man's case, it's actually more of like a not so organic and more of like his suit of armor, and really just creating a digital puppet, if you will, and then passing that off to the animation team, who then took it and manipulated it and did the animation sequences. And then it would go on to lighting, where people would paint and light the whole, all the different assets and all the environment. And then, so it was a whole, there's multiple teams involved in it, but specifically I was involved in more of like the building of the character and the creature. So it had a lot to do with anatomy and kind of just movement. And so, yeah, we built a lot of digital stuff. We built a digital Iron Man. The coolest thing that I worked on was kind of the iconic scene in the movie where he gets shot down out of the sky and he lands in this crater. And he crawls out of this crater, and he's kind of facing a tank, and he kind of like shoots a missile from the side of his arm and blows up this tank, and then walks away.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I am a big fan of the whole Marvel franchise, so that's really neat, huh?
Awesome.
Like I have a weird connection, or just a weird kind of background knowledge of that film. A friend of mine who I'm very close with, went to school with, his uncle edits films, and we would see some of his films that he'd edited when we were in college. He'd be like, oh, my uncle edited this film, let's check it out. And they were they're just B movies really at the end of the day. And then I guess his big breakout was Iron Man. So I'm kind of curious, from the production end of it, maybe it wasn't anything that it would have affected you, but my understanding is that they filmed like an outrageous amount of footage and kind of just ad-libbed most of the stuff. And then this editor, my friend's uncle, was the one that kind of pieced it all together into a coherent narrative. But I guess a lot of the after effects are sort of after they've decided on what they're going to do. Is that kind of right? Or I don't know. So. Yeah,
that's really interesting. I was not aware of that, but that doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
But yeah, you're exactly right. In the animation and visual effects industry, typically, the live action parts of the films have already been shot or are almost done by the time, the animation and visual effects team gets a hold of it, and then starts kind of layering in all the different, integration of the digital world with the real world, if you will. But he's so, like, the director of that movie, John, I always mispronounce his last name. John Favreau, I think, is his name.
Okay. Yeah.
He's got a role. He's Iron Man's chauffeur, I think, in the movie, and they are hilarious. Like him and Robert Downey Jr. I didn't meet them personally, but I could definitely see them ad-libbing stuff because they're so creative and goofy. So
interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. Yeah. I don't know. So I didn't know this stuff about you at all. This is all very interesting. Huh.
Yeah, that was a former life.
Sure.
I loved it. It was really great work, but it was sitting in front of a computer in a dark room for 12 hours a day. And so, sure. Yeah, that was a little. I was while I was in school, actually. Getting this degree, I was actually a cook at a fine dining restaurant in downtown Berkeley.
Huh.
And so that really planted the seeds for me. I'd always loved cooking, but I mean, I didn't know much. And this chef of this restaurant kind of took a chance on me because I had no experience, and he had a soft spot for working college students, and he gave me a shot. And I worked there for 3 years cooking and learning about food and where it came from. And obviously the Northern California and California in general is just so there's so much great food that comes out of California that's produced there. And
sure.
So it just opened my eyes to all the different things about food that I didn't think about before. So
And so there was obviously a big moment where you were like, you had this career going and you decided to, completely switch, basically, like you said, a whole nother life. You decided to start a second life. And I totally relate to that because obviously I'm doing that a little bit right now. And I've done it already a few times in other situations. So like, what was the impetus there? Like, talk us through that period of your life, like where you decided I'm going to go all the way back to Texas and open up like a ranch and all. I mean, it's a lot,
Yeah, no doubt. It's I think part of it was just I was young enough that I didn't have enough responsibility where I could, I didn't have a family. I was single at the time. And it's the kind of thing where you get a wild hair and you are not afraid to pursue it because I don't know at what point you made a big switch, but so you were doing something else before you started training jiu-jitsu, is that right?
Well, I was a professor over in South Korea, so I was teaching at a graduate school and stuff. So yeah, it's and then even just that moving to Korea, and I also moved to Japan before that. One thing I relate to in what you're saying is not having responsibilities. I can tell you that it was a lot easier to go to Asia by myself than it was to leave Asia with my family. That was like I'd gone and created a family, and I tell you, crossing international waters with a family is a totally different experience than when you're just this young single male, like just like going somewhere. That was easy. I just packed a bag and bought a plane ticket. Coming back here was like a kind of Herculean task at the end of the day. So,
man, I can't even imagine. That sounds like it. Yeah, but I actually was in California when the switch happened. So I didn't move back to Texas until I actually had a few years under my belt of experience. The moment I knew is kind of when I found myself, working one day, at the company I was at, and I just realized, I was spending all my time on the weekends volunteering at farms, and I had chickens, I had a garden. I was taking classes at this local community college about, outdoors gardening and, mycology and beekeeping. And I just realized this is more than a hobby. This isn't, this is what I spend all of my free time doing. And it's something that is bringing me more satisfaction than, just working on all these different things. And like I said, I didn't dislike my animation career. It was amazing. I just realized that my true passion was in working with the natural world in a more kind of visceral way than just on the computer. So
well, that makes sense. That makes total sense to me. Yeah. That's really cool. I pick up stray thoughts in there. Are you still on the beekeeping?
Not so much, although we've got some hives here at the ranch, which are empty right now.
I see.
Yeah, but I tried a lot of different things, and I ended up actually working. So when I actually switched the careers, I ended up working for a guy who had just opened a meat company in San Francisco, and it was amazing. His name's Ryan Farr, and he has this company called 4505 Meats, and they have a national line of products now. They make these chicharrones, which are like fried pork skins,
awesome,
which are the best out there. I've had all the options. They're by far the best. But he had started.
Could you say that again? His website or whatever his name. Yeah. What was the name of the product again? So.
Yeah, no problem. It's kind of an odd name, but it's 4505, like the numbers 4505 Meats. and he's got a couple barbecue restaurants in the Bay Area, and he has a line of chicharrones that you can pretty much buy everywhere now, I think. H-E-B, and but he had started this company, and he was buying one animal at a time from a local farm and breaking it down, teaching himself how to butcher whole animals, and then selling them at the farmer's market and making burgers and sausage, and just like a really grassroots thing. He came from the restaurant world. He was a chef, and he just had been kind of, I think he was just kind of burned out from that world, and he wanted to do something that was a little bit more conducive to living somewhat of a normal lifestyle.
Sure.
As a chef, you're working a lot of time nights and weekends and all that. So, so that was in 2010, and I haven't looked back. So since that time.
And then what brought you back to Texas?
So I always told myself I wasn't going to move back to Texas for some reason. And I've learned since then, anytime I say that it happens, I know that's like almost an indication that it's going to happen.
I see.
So if I say like, I'm never going to do this, or I'm never, somehow it ends up happening. And so it was one of those things. I always thought I was never going to move. And then more and more, I started to realize I wanted to move somewhere and take the skills that I had learned and kind of help create something and be a part of something that was going to one day mimic the types of farms and the types of operations I was seeing in California. And so the idea of moving back to Texas just became more and more appealing. And, having grown up here, I had some reasons to come back. My family, we had all kind of made a pact one day that we would all eventually move back. And so we ended up doing that. So, that was 2006. And I have been working for Augustus Ranch meat company since early 2006. So
early 2006. So, okay. Huh.
Yes, sir.
And tell us about that. Like what's your role in things, and tell us more about Augustus Ranch.
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you the rundown. Well, in a nutshell, basically I say we, I'm not actually blood related, but very much am here integrated with the family. It's a family operation, and we're basically a fifth generation working ranch. And when I say fifth generation, I mean that the family has been in this area for since the late 1800s. Ooh. And they've always been entrepreneurs, and their family actually stems from a business that started over 100 years ago. It's a wireworks business where they create different metal and wire-based products, and it actually still is in existence today. But they had always lived, been tied to agriculture in some form, more as like a lifestyle in terms of, raising animals, growing your own food. And so that's just kind of always been part of their family's history. And in 1985, Dennis Casper, who I work for, Dennis Casper and the Casper family, he started ranching, and then later on in life, he decided to start his own meat label. So we do everything from start to finish. We raise all the animals here on the ranch. We take them through all the different stages all the way to the end. And then we direct market the meat as well. So we sell to individuals. We ship packages via UPS in insulated containers right to your doorstep. And we've also, over the years, sold to a handful of restaurants, really, really great, amazing restaurants, mostly Austin, some in Houston and San Antonio. And this year, we actually just completed the first year of a contract supplying ground beef to the Austin Independent School District.
Ooh, so nice.
Yeah, that was a huge kind of step up for us because of just purely the amount of volume. And so we've been supplying all of their schools since the start of this year, starting in January and going through the end of summer. And then we'll actually start back up again and supply them for another year. And hopefully it'll be a multi-year deal. But
That's cool.
yeah, absolutely. It's great to know that the kids are getting some really good high quality meat, and the Austin Independent School District really does a great job of bringing in as much local organic produce and meat as they can. So they're really kind of, I think, becoming a role model for other school districts, for other public school systems. So
well, that is really cool. I don't want to throw New Braunfels school system under the bus. They're doing okay with their lunches, but I could stand to see a change in all of it. Obviously, my dietary inclinations are a little different than the standard and the norm. So like, yeah, I see what my daughter gets, and I'm like, well, that's not what we're gonna have for dinner tonight. But yeah.
Do you remember the kind of meals that you got when you were growing up, going to school?
It was terrible. I think I ate pizza like every day or something. I had like a pizza or like a chicken, like a kind of like a chicken patty sandwich or something like that. That was like pretty much probably what I alternated between from all the way through like high school or something. I don't know. It was just looking back on, and then there were like Pepsi machines and Coke machines, and I didn't do that. My parents didn't really give me a little extra change to do that, but everybody around me was just smashing sodas and stuff all day, and just like, yeah. But anyways, I don't know where the obesity epidemic came from exactly. I'm not sure. So I'm not a scientist, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty crazy to think about, and I honestly don't know enough about the way that the public school systems operate in terms of how they get their funding for their food programs, and I'm sure they're constrained in certain ways, but at the same time, I have the same memories of just I still can remember the smell of like rancid fry oil or just
easily
just weird food like substances, highly processed, and
Sure.
So,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're looking at like a bottom line. And then beyond that, I mean, I think the average person has not done a lot of adventurous thinking about diet. And I've made the point to a lot of people that I just say to a lot of people that are like closer to us in age, I'm like, if they haven't done anything with their diet, they're just kind of eating whatever's available. I just typically say like, hey, nutrition science didn't really stop when we were in high school. Like people kept researching that, there's a lot of new information that people have found out in like the last 20, 30 years. You might want to just take some time and just sort of familiarize yourself with some of the research that's happened. Because if you're still using nutritional guidelines based on what you learned in high school, and you're like, I'm 40, like if you're 40-year-olds plus, like, you're really using outdated ways of thinking about what you can or can't eat. I'm always a little I know lots of really bright people who are overweight, in America and stuff, and then I kind of look at what they're eating, and they'll describe to me like a strategy that they really believe will lead them out of the situation that they're in. And I'm like, that's just not going to work at all. Like you're practically making it worse, if anything, with what you're. So it's, yeah, I mean, but people are, it's hard to beat commercials and all of that kind of stuff on top of it. It's just, I mean, that's really Rob Wolf's, point to shine, I think, and everything. And we'll have Rob on the show and we'll talk more with him. I'm not the scientist on all of that. I just kind of know that as soon as I stopped eating processed foods and switched to just a very whole food diet, man, the change was enormous. So amongst other particulars you could get into, but I think that in and of itself is such a powerful thing. Like cook your own meal, at least, like stuff like that. It's huge.
Man, I'll tell you, the whole Rob Wolf, I've really enjoyed. I mean, he's been parallel to my journey this whole time, because back in 2009, I want to say late 2009, his first book came out,
Mm-hmm.
The Paleo Solution, and I have been following him ever since. And this
Wow.
entire time of kind of working in the food industry and learning more about where food comes from, there's always been the parallel in terms of just my interest of, understanding, well, what does this mean for health? What does this mean for nutrition? How do all these things work together? And he has done such an exceptional job of just at times changing what he had previously thought or said to reflect, as we continue to evolve our understanding. And I've always respected that about him, because he's not so married to like specific ideas that he doesn't start to change over time. And so he's such a voice of reason in all of the noise that is, modern food. And, it's so, don't even get me started on this whole thing. That's like my other passion is just the health aspect of food, not just the enjoyment and understanding how to produce it, but also the health aspect and how that ties into everything. 'Cause they're all so inextricably linked at the end of the day. So.
Yeah. I just speaking to that sort of changing your mind and that flexibility, I spend a fair amount of time with Rob here and there, and I ask him questions almost constantly about food and stuff, and I'll just ask him about something like, are beans okay, or something like that, and he'd be like, well, if they work for you, they are. Basically, tends to be the answer. He's like, there are a lot of people that like that's a good choice for them, go off beans as well as off maybe grains and dairy or something, but then like, once you feel your system like stabilizing, trying to find the maximum latitude that you have in diet so that you don't have to be like a hermit, like, living away from all people and stuff. Like, I really think that's a good way of thinking about diet, instead of like, trying to be like ultra. I mean, I think the best term is like being like religious about diet, sort of, where the observation is where you're observing the diet for reasons that really go beyond choices of health. They're just they're strict to the point of inflexibility. I think that's a tricky place to be in. Like, but, how do you see what you're doing in terms of the meat that you produce? How does that fit into general health? Like, just, I know about stuff like that, but I think a lot of listeners may not know about stuff like that.
Sure. So, in my opinion, both based on just the research that I've done, and also I've been a guinea pig. I mean, I've done every which way. I've been, I was hardcore vegan, macrobiotic vegan for several months. I've tried, the high fat, low protein, I mean, I've tried everything over the years, and I've kind of drilled down into the things that work best for me. But generally speaking, I think meat, and red meat in particular, is really one of the healthiest, most nutrient dense foods on the planet, hands down. And the way that red meat has been vilified over the past decade, and even going farther back into the, I guess, 70s and 80s, when, modern, the government started promoting kind of a low fat diet and kind of demonizing saturated fat. I think that is just so completely wrong. And again, there's going to be exceptions to the rule. You've got to find what works best for you. Like, we both, like you just said, but I think in general, meat is it's so incredibly nutrient dense. It's bioavailable to us, meaning that, I can literally go out there and pretty much kill and eat anything walking on four legs, right? And I'll be able to digest it and assimilate it into, high quality nutrients really easily. Whereas if I go out into the world and I start picking and eating plants, the vast majority of them are probably going to kill me, or at the very, at the least are going to make me sick, or they're not going to work well with my system. And so I always like thinking about it in that sense. I think that meat is like very congruent with our operating system, if you will. Whereas, I didn't come up with this, but someone said that, the plant, we're like Mac computers, and the plant world is like Microsoft, and, the meat world is like, is like Mac, if you will. And so we do really well with meat. Whereas, yeah, we can communicate with Microsoft, and we can use plants, and I'm not going to vilify plants in any way, but just as a whole, I think meat is is such an incredible food source. I have dedicated the last 10 years of my life to studying it, to learning about it, to figuring out how the role that it plays in our life, in both from a historical standpoint. What did we eat over the past few thousand years and beyond, and how is it today? Is it that much different? And so I feel like I'm kind of rambling now, but
no, it's okay.
Yeah, I absolutely think red meat is just a health food. I mean, I really believe that. And so obviously, if we start to drill down though, and we start to look at some of the nuances and details, there's a lot of ways the modern meat industry has kind of taken some bad turns, right? In terms of the industrialization of the food system. And, I think the easiest thing, the thing that I explain to people is that there's really three categories you need to think about when you're talking about meat, if you really want to evaluate if it's good. And one of those categories, one of those three, is quality, and so that has to do with kind of the culinary aspect of it. One of those categories is nutrition, and nutrition meaning let's look at it under a microscope. What does the fatty acid profile look like? What is the concentrations of vitamins and minerals? And then the third is going to be the environmental impact. And so how is the meat that we're producing actually impacting the environment, which is, of course, linked to our health as well. And so I like to think about it in those three different categories: quality, health, and environment.
So on that note, when we get to the environment, I think these days, I feel like the mainstream opinion is that meat consumption is really bad for the environment. Can you speak to that and what you say to people who come at you with that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that meat has become a scapegoat, and in terms of the actual impact on the environment, I think it's been very much overemphasized and overblown. Things as simple as a lot of the data we've seen, for example, the studies that they produced, I want to say it was the World Health Organization, looking at the full life cycle analysis of meat in terms of its the greenhouse gas emissions and all of the associated kind of environmental impacts from that. So they looked at that and they made these guesstimations about the environmental impact in those terms, and then they compared it to the transportation industry. And the thing that was really upsetting about that is that for meat, they looked at the entire life cycle, meaning all of the different inputs, whether it was food or transportation or processing, all of the different things that it took to actually produce and get meat to your table, versus the transportation side of things. They only did the actual emissions from the tailpipe of vehicles. And so they didn't take into account the actual production of cars or all of the different associated things that you might think of if we're looking truly at a life cycle analysis. So that's just one example of how there's kind of an agenda. There's kind of this agenda to vilify meat, and there's a lot of different reasons I think why that is. And to be honest, I'm not an expert in that. Although I'm really excited about Rob. Again, we're talking about Rob Wolf. Him and Diana Rogers are going to they have a book coming out. I think it's this summer, possibly this fall, called Sacred Cow. And it's really going to be looking at all of these different details about meat production and what is the truth? What is the truth about how meat impacts our health, how meat impacts our environment? And I know that they've done a great job of really aggregating all the data and looking at the details. And I can't wait for that book. But
on that note, I actually got I had some advanced insight into what they were writing, because when I met Rob, which was last year in Costa Rica, it just so happened that Diana Rogers was coming through Tamarindo, Costa Rica, which is where we were. And he was just like, oh, this is really weird. This person I'm writing this book with is actually in Costa Rica right now. And it's like, she's actually here in town. And so Rob and I were having lunch, and then she came to lunch with us. And I talked to her for a good little while about the book. And they were still kicking around the title, like Sacred Cow at that point. And they were asking my opinion about it. And like, what does it bring to mind when I hear like Sacred Cow? And then we ended up talking a bunch about India and stuff like that. And yeah, I was just totally fascinated by everything she had to say. And just, yeah, I've been excited for a good while about that book. I guess it's like a year and a half now. I'm always like, hey, when's that book coming out? Hey, when's that book coming out? So like, yeah,
That's
it's
awesome.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I realized I kind of went off on some tangents there, but
No.
like, I think that when people ask me about the environmental impact of meat, what I say is, if we weren't here, if you and I, if the human species was not here, but everything else was the same as it was, we would, there's tons and tons of animals and plants working together in these biodiverse, landscapes, ecosystems. And so we need animals. We need
Sure.
animals as a part of the natural world. And the fact that we can eat them and turn them into high quality food for humans is just an absolute, blessing on so
Sure.
many levels. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that even if the whole human species tomorrow decided that we're not going to eat meat anymore, well, we would still need a whole lot of animals in order to create balanced ecosystems and in order to
Totally.
create, landscapes that are thriving. So
Sure.
there's a place for animal agriculture. There's a place for meat. And
Sure.
even if you don't want to eat it for ethical reasons or any other reason, we still need animals on the landscape. So.
True. And then there's the issue too. I mean, I don't want to go on too many tangents as well myself, but like if you're looking at monocropping style farming and everything, I mean, they're ripping up moles and squirrels and everything. Like from the ethical food production perspective, like the endless rows of corn and the endless rows of soy are not anything short of like ecological devastation and the sort of genocide, really, that you're that doesn't represent what like an environment would naturally look like. Endless rows of any sort of crop, really. That's not typical anywhere in the world, like that humans haven't developed. So it's not an ecological windfall all of a sudden. So
Totally. And if you think about it, I mean, let's say you are going to plant a field of soy or corn or vegetables or whatever you're going to do. You're exactly right. You're going to disrupt all kinds of biological activity, from the critters in the soil to the rabbits and the mice and the moles. So how many lives are being displaced versus I can kill one cow and eat that for 6 months if I'm eating nothing other than that, right? So that's one life form.
Right.
And so, you have to then make the argument, well, a cow's life is worth more than a mouse's life. And, I probably agree with you, but I don't think most people are going to actually think about it that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it gets more complicated. I think people have moved pretty far away from the means of production. That's one of the biggest reasons that globalization can be dangerous, especially ecologically, is that we are so far removed from the experience of how the items in our lives have gotten there, whether it's food or just whatever other objects we use. We're completely removed from that process. So it's commodification of everything, and that makes it very cheap and easy to just say, okay, I'll take this, and then it also makes it easy to take on a simplified view of how you would correct some of those issues, like because you're not really very aware of what's going on at the actual production level. And it's interesting for me that most of the people that I've known over the course of my life that were vegetarians or vegans, and then if they got deeper into agriculture, they decided to go real deep into agriculture, pretty high percentage of them went paleo at the end of it. Like once they realized, like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm not letting animals just come in and eat my crop, so I'm trying to get rid of them, and I end up probably maybe shooting a deer or something like that. Like stuff like that starts happening a little more frequently, especially if they want to grow and size their farm and all of a sudden they're like, well, it'd be wasteful not to eat this. And so next thing you know, they've gone paleo and they didn't even realize it. But
Man, you're exactly right. And that was such a great way to put it in terms of, so many of us. I mean, I grew up in Dallas. Like I said, I grew up in the city. We got our food from the grocery store, and I did not know anything about where my food came from. And so as I started learning more and more and more, I mean, there were so many times when I was really uncomfortable. Like, I still remember the very first animal that I killed with my own hands. And I actually made the point of doing that because I was at this crossroads where I said to myself, well, if I'm going to eat meat, I need to do this. I need to experience it on, a really deep level and make the decision on whether or not I feel like this is right, if this is natural. And, I'm not saying that every person has to necessarily do that, although I think every person should at least watch or witness or be exposed to some degree to what's going on there, because, you're exactly right. Like, we're so disconnected on so many levels. And then because of that, we can kind of oversimplify potentially thinking about these problems and these issues without having any real experience or really any real, kind of connection to that. And I mean, I still remember it like yesterday. I was on a farm and I helped this guy kill some of his geese, and it was traumatic because I had just never done that. But I realized soon after, I felt the whole spectrum of emotions, and I realized soon after, this is natural and I feel really good about doing it. It's just that I need to actually know all the different parts of the process, and I need to know that this is being done with respect and with care. And so figuring out where your food comes from, I feel like it's never actually been easier to do that with all of the different options we have now, and connecting directly with farms or through farmers markets. And so hopefully that'll continue.
Yeah, true. Yeah, beautiful stuff. Well, tell me a little bit more about Augustus Ranch and like kind of what do you guys offer, and how do I tell me a little more about what you offer and like how you operate and stuff like that. I just saw, I think on your Instagram, that you guys are riding horses over there, like not like buggies and stuff. Like,
man, I'm on a horse right now.
Oh,
no, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm just joking. No, so we definitely, one of the goals with Augustus Ranch, again, it's a family operation, and I'm kind of, I'm here with the family. I live here on the ranch. I'm here every day, and my job mostly revolves around, once all of the animals turn into food, what happens with them. And so all the different aspects of just the actual processing and the inventory and the sales and the distribution and the marketing, and how all of those different pieces fit together. And so over time, I've been more and more learning about the live animal side of things, right? So how the actual ranching takes place. And so I'm really upfront and intimate with that, although that's not part of my daily job. But you mentioned horses. Yeah, I posted something on Instagram. Part of what we do is really trying to protect the agrarian lifestyle so that future generations will want to follow in our footsteps. And so there will be people producing our food. So, there's kind of been a resurgence of people wanting to, young people wanting to get into farming. And there's a lot of challenges in doing that. It's just, that's a whole separate conversation. But, part of what we want to do is just make a sustainable operation from the standpoint that future generations will actually want to follow in our footsteps and will want to take this up as a career and as a life calling. And so the horses are a part of that, using horses to manage cattle and to, it makes it, it just adds, it really is a part of protecting and pursuing that agrarian lifestyle. And so, I'm not going to sit here and say we don't use technology. We use, we use electric fencing, right, to set up paddocks, and we will use 4-wheelers, and we'll use, various other things, GPS data to look at properties and things like that. But, part of what we're doing really is just try to make something that future generations will want to pursue. And so, So basically, yeah, we raise cattle and pigs, and we've also got goats and a few chickens and geese and things here and there. But most of what we do is we do pasture raised cattle and pork,
Nice.
and we do it all from start to finish here on the ranch. We manage about 6 properties that totals around 5,000 acres. And so I think the biggest property is going to be somewhere in around 2,500 acres. And so, everything from, genetics to the cow-calf operation to taking the cattle through the growing phase to the finishing phase, and then working directly with small processors to actually, turn it into high-quality meat. There's a lot of details that go into that, and we kind of handle all of those stages. And so
Nice.
that's one thing that kind of makes us unique, although there's a lot of small farms starting to get into the direct marketing game where they're producing the animals and then they're also marketing it to people, online through farmers markets. And so the best way to get our meat is really just to go to our website, which is augustusranch.com, and you can shop all of our meat online. So we've got beef packages, we've got pork packages, we've got some that are mixed, and we've tried to price everything so that it's affordable. If you look at if you go to like Omaha Steaks, for example, that's one of the biggest online meat purveyors, and they've been around since the time of like going door to door, before the internet, and so they've been around a long time, but they're higher priced than we are, and I have no idea where their meat comes from. I don't know if they're getting it from I just don't know, but I would say it's not coming from a small farm. I think I can say that much, but so we try to make sure everything's priced, fairly. It's definitely more expensive than what you'll find at the grocery store, but there's so many other things that you're doing when you purchase, meat directly from the farmer. You're supporting local farms and local agriculture. You're getting something that you can ask questions about, right? So there's full transparency. A big part of my job is answering people's questions. I'm in communication with every person that orders from our website. And so I answer, lots of different questions about the meat, about how it's raised. And so, it's healthier, it tastes better. Your dollars are going directly to a small farm. And so there's really, I think the price is really fair when you think about it like that.
I've seen your prices and I think they're totally fair. Yeah. I would totally back that up. Totally fair, especially for what you're offering. And yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think, and I've been, as keeps dancing around in my mind, you keep saying like the money's going to the farmer, but y'all are you're on horses. The money's going straight to the cowboys. I mean, like, how cool is that? Like you've actually got cowboys out there. Like, I mean, that's a dead thing, like, and you guys are bringing that back. And I just think that's the coolest, but
I wish I'm like, I'm more the butcher, so I can't claim to be a cowboy, but at the same time, so DC is the son of Dennis, who I work for. His name's DC. It's short for Dennis Chase, and I think he's 25. He has chosen that lifestyle. He is a true through and through cowboy. I mean,
that's cool.
He spends, just about every day on the back of a horse, and he travels around Texas actually with a small group of other cowboys. And I mean, it really is the continuation of a legacy that is rarer and rarer, and they do everything by horseback, and they have trailers, and it's a very unique lifestyle. And it's unforgiving. You're working during the heat of the day. A lot of times it's 100 degrees, 105 degrees, and you've got long sleeves on, and you're on horseback, and you're dealing with animals, and you're dealing with different properties. And I mean, it's really remarkable. But you're exactly right. I mean, it's a really unique lifestyle, and it's been really awesome to be around that and see how those guys operate. And they've, it's really unique. So
that's so cool. I think that's the coolest. I don't know. I was kind of raised on John Wayne movies and stuff like that. So, it's I'm not much of a I'm nothing on horseback. I find myself very uncomfortable, but I have a lot of respect for it. So
Awesome.
yeah. But anyways, I think we've gotten a pretty good sense of everything that's going on at Augustus Ranch, and I'm sure probably have you back on the show again later. Might have you back on with like Maggie and Maggie Eubank and John Tarpoff and Rob Wolf. I'm kind of planning a show to have all three of you, and then with Rob and stuff like that, talking about the kind of the health science on the other side of it. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show, and it was great to hear everything that you had to say. And could you one more time plug the ranch website and everything, just so people don't have to go back through the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. It's augustusranch.com. So it's like August plus us. So August, like the month August, and then us, US, augustusranch.com. And that's our handle on social media. So just at Augustus Ranch for Facebook and Instagram. And you can really, find out a lot about our operation from the website. And I get emails every day. So, don't hesitate to reach out if, folks have questions or they want to learn a little bit more or have, some specific questions about how things are done. And, that's the best way to find us. And we're just an hour and 45 minutes outside of Austin. So probably I would say an hour and 25 minutes away from, hill country from New Braunfels there. And so pretty darn close. So
yeah, awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Kent. And we hope to hear again from you soon. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yeah.